Hello, job seekers. Melanie here with CGL Recruiting. And today we are on to session 13 of Interview Bootcamp. Now, this is a session of 18 videos, I think it is. So if you haven't seen the other ones, I do recommend you go back and actually start from the beginning. You can watch here and go back, but what we've tried to do is give you a whole set of small, manageable chunks of information to get your interview skills up to the best that they possibly can be. Now, remember, a lot of the questions that we are covering all the way through Interview Bootcamp are coming directly from our HR survey of over 100 HR professionals. And these are the questions that they're going to like to ask you and want to know the answers. So not only are we going to cover the questions, as always, I'm going to tell you what they're looking for and some strategies to help you answer this as best as you possibly can so you can get through that interview and get an offer to see if you want the job. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet, please take a moment to do that now. It will not only notify you when we have new videos come up, but we also have live events all throughout the year, and we'd love to have you join us at one of those. All of our events are completely free, and so by subscribing, it notifies you to tell you, hey, here's another one that's coming up that you might be interested in case you want to attend. All right, so for today, session 13, we're going to be focused on the questions that are asked to you. They're specifically looking at your strengths and your weaknesses. And oh my goodness, this is one of the biggest places that interviewers trip, and they make a mistake, a fatal flaw that they can't recover from. So let's cover how to do good on the ones focusing on your strengths and your weaknesses. Now, there's lots of different ways that they can nuance and ask these questions. So I'm going to cover several of them to give you the best chance possible to do your best. Okay, let's take a look at the first question, and that is, why would you be a great fit for this role? Now, they're looking for you to take one of your strengths and align it with one of the things that they are looking for. Now, hopefully you did your research, right? You've looked at the job description, you've looked at the company, you see where they're going. When you answer this, you should not have a stock answer that you give for every single time you're asked this question. Your answer should change with the company and position you're interviewing for. So if they're asking why you should be a great fit for this role, something like, I have wonderful communication skills, blah, 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 is not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. You want to focus on something that fulfills the need. And that is something that's related to the job they're hiring for. So let's say they're looking for somebody in HR, in an HRIS position that's going to be implementing a new HRIS system. They're going to implement SAP or Oracle or whatever globally. So a great answer to this question, if you're doing something like that, is to highlight one of your skills that directly ties to that. Like, well, I have excellent experience in change management in a global environment. Or I am an excellent process person. And for example, in what needs to be done in this job of implementing a new system, having someone who can process flow out all of that information and then translate it into the system, I believe makes me a great fit. You're trying to satisfy their needs. So as much as you can, be specific against the job description. If you can't find something in the job description to be specific about, you can do it for the company. If you know the company is going through a major acquisition or something like that, that is something you can highlight. But in general, fill the most basic need that they have, which will be on the job description. Okay, let's take a look at our next question, which is, what makes you unique? Holy cow, it's an open-ended question, right? It's one of those things that when you ask what makes you unique, do you focus on something that's quirky, something that sets you apart, something that's a little different, or do you just focus on a strength? Now, I think if you just do a strength, like, again, communication skills, or I'm really good at presentations or something, that is something that's going to leave you as vanilla. It's going to put you in the middle of the pack. And you are most likely interviewing as a set of candidates. So you need to do something that's going to set you apart from the other candidates. But again, The whole time you're being interviewed, they're looking through a lens of, I really need somebody to take this job so I can stop doing recruiting and hiring and get back to my job as the manager. So the best way for you to answer this question is to come up with something unique that ties to the description. So let's go back to the HRIS example. If you know this person is going to have to be doing this HRIS implementation, what makes you unique can be something like, I find that I truly enjoy change management. I enjoy helping people get some new technology or some new system or some new process and figuring out how it works for them, embracing it, and getting them to not only just accept the change, but to be welcoming of the change. Now, of course, don't ever lie, right? You need to pick some kind of strength that you have inherently already, and you have so many to pick from. This shouldn't be hard to find things to tie back. Now, there's often times where you will get asked these strength questions more than one time, and you don't want to just always hit the same thing. So if they ask you this in different ways, try to get a chance to show different things about yourself and about your skills and experience, so you get a little bit more of a push as to why you are a great candidate for the role. All right, let's take a look at the one where most people trip. And that is, what is your work-related weakness? Now, a lot of people feel the need to give a weakness that is a little too brutal and a little too raw and undermines them for the position. If you're going for a position that's going to be leading an organization and you say, well, sometimes I get, stuck in looking at the tactical, that's a fatal flaw. That's something that's going to stop them in their tracks. You're probably going to get more questions on it. And they're most likely going to say, that makes me feel uncomfortable with this candidate. I'm really looking for somebody with the opposite skill. So how do you answer this question? Well, the reality is we're all growing people, right? And we've all had weaknesses in our paths that we've learned to overcome, either by different strategies or taking a class that we did and getting a new skill. So my advice to you on how you can best answer this is to pick a weakness, because you already know about the job from your research. Pick a weakness that does not undermine you for the job and one that you can immediately turn into a positive. So for example, for the HRIS person, you could say, well, earlier in my career, when I was trying to do implementations, a weakness for me was I didn't have a great worldwide exposure yet. And what I've over time and over the last several years, I've been able to get more and more of that to the point where I now have this, this, and this. But because it was a weakness for me in the past, it's something that I now find I am continually trying to broaden my perspectives to make sure that it doesn't be a weakness again in the future. You're trying to not give them something to find a fatal flaw. And honesty is great, but you don't want to undermine yourself. The chances are, if you are that aware of a weakness, you have strategies that you've already put in place in order to help you overcome it. Okay, let's take a look at our next question, which is describe yourself in either one word or 3 words, whatever number they choose. This is something that you can easily have done in advance. Now, when they are asking to describe yourself, please stay professionally. Sometimes I will get somebody that says, well, I'm a great reader, or I do really great on doing outdoor activities. And that's all wonderful information about you, but I'm not going to make a choice on you of a match for this position, most likely with that data. So you want to choose 1 or 3 words that are professional and represent you well. Now you should anticipate this question or something like it for every interview you go on. And so before you walk in there, think about, this job description, this position, what do I think are some some words that I can use to answer this? You want to do ones that align as best as you can. Again, in the HRIS one, where that person's going to be working with a system day in and day out, it could be some that I am a very tech-savvy individual. I am tech-savvy and I love, learning new technologies and finding how to implement it. So try to do things that are going to still apply against the position. Now, if you can, if you have the time, and you'll have to gauge this by looking at the person you're interviewing with. It's one thing to give them a word. It's another thing to actually reinforce that skill by giving them an example of where you've actually utilized that key word or key strength about you that you're giving them. So let's say, for example, you give a strength or a keyword saying, I'm a great communicator. Okay, let's take on communication because it's always one that people want to use. And you say, I'm a great communicator. And say, now give an example of, there was a project that we had to influence the organization of how this project would help to morph us over time to have a better future. And it was a message that some people had tried to get across, and it was not being received positively. And it was an area where I found that my communication skills shined, because I was able to break down the message into parts that made it useful to each of the audiences I was talking to. And that enabled me to get them through that change management curve and get on board with what we're trying to do. So one thing to give a word, another thing to reinforce it with a positive show of how your skills are really doing wonderful in that area. Okay, one more. What is your top strength? What do you do better than others, which makes you successful? Okay, there's a trick in this question. And the trick is, you don't ever want to undermine somebody else when you're giving yourself positive praise. They're asking you, what do you do better than others? What's your one thing? What makes you really great at your job? But there's a catch in here that says, better than others. The last thing you want to do is, well, the rest of my team is really terrible at doing blah, 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 blah. Don't ever undermine your team, because what happens in an interview is it puts in the interviewer's minds that if you're doing that to pass people, will you do that in your next job? Do not fall for that trick. It is something that will undermine you. So it's very easy to just focus on your success without having to undermine others, and then you'll do just fine on this question. All right, job seekers, like I said, this is session 13, and we have 5 more to go on Interview Bootcamp. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments down below. We do try to take a look at each and every one and respond. And we have more live events coming up, so make sure you've subscribed to the channel. Give us that thumbs up if you feel like this data is helpful. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.